Peace and blessings, family. This is Emmanuel Zachariah from Zachariah Publishing, and I am so excited to present the third in the series of Emmanuel's journey to living well. The title of this particular one is called Emmanuel's Journey to Faith, where Emmanuel tries to find the elusive place where faith is. And it's a wonderful, beautiful compilation of scripture and storytelling that I hope you enjoy. All right, enjoy the video, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace.
Immanuel and the Map of the Unseen, A Journey of Faith. Immanuel stood at the very edge of the Whispering Woods. His sturdy brown boots were laced tight, and his leather satchel was slung over his shoulder, ready for the greatest adventure of his life. He looked into the deep green forest, feeling a mix of excitement and wonder. Today was the day he would find the greatest treasure of all, but he didn't know exactly where he was going yet. Immanuel reached into his pocket and pulled out his favorite golden compass. He frowned as the needle began to spin in frantic, dizzying circles. He was searching for a place called Faith, but no matter how hard he looked at his paper map, the name wasn't written anywhere. "How can I find something that isn't on the map?" he whispered to himself, feeling a little bit lost before he even started. Suddenly, the air grew still, and a peaceful presence filled the clearing. Fidelis stepped gracefully from the long shadows of a massive, ancient oak tree. She had kind eyes and long hair streaked with silver-like moonlight. In one hand, she carried a polished wooden staff, and in the other, a scroll that seemed to pulse with a soft, warm light. "Faith is not something you find with a compass, little one," Fidelis said with a gentle smile. She leaned on her staff and looked toward the horizon. "Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." Immanuel listened closely, trying to understand how he could be sure of something he couldn't see with his own eyes. Fidelis handed the glowing scroll to Immanuel. With trembling fingers, he unrolled the heavy parchment, but his heart sank. The scroll was completely blank from top to bottom. Not a single trail, river, or mountain was drawn on it. "I don't understand," Immanuel said, feeling a cold spark of doubt. "How can an empty map lead me anywhere?" "The path only appears when you take a step," Fidelis explained, her voice as steady as a rock. She pointed her staff toward a massive, misty canyon where the ground simply ended. The white clouds swirled below like a deep, mysterious ocean. Immanuel looked at the drop and then at the blank scroll, his heart beating fast in his chest. Immanuel closed his eyes for a second, then took a deep breath. He lifted his boot and took a shaky, brave step right over the edge of the cliff into the empty air. Suddenly, a shimmering golden stone snapped into existence right beneath his foot. It felt solid and strong, supporting his weight perfectly over the vast, cloudy depths. As he continued to walk, more shimmering stones appeared with every single step. They formed a beautiful bridge of light that stretched out through the sea of clouds. Immanuel wasn't afraid anymore. He was amazed. He realized that the bridge wasn't there until he decided to trust and move forward. The mist began to clear as they reached the other side of the canyon. The landscape changed into a vast, dry plain under a bright sun. Everything was dusty and brown, and the air felt very still. Fidelis walked beside him, her staff clicking against the dry ground as they approached a strange sight in the middle of the desert. They found a strong man named Noah working hard under the hot sun. He was hammering long, heavy cedar planks onto the side of a boat so large it looked like a floating house. "Why are you building a boat in the middle of the dry desert, Mr. Noah?" Immanuel asked, looking at the dusty ground where there wasn't a drop of water to be seen. Noah stopped his work and smiled down at the young boy. I am preparing this boat because I trust the Creator's promise, he explained. Even though there is no rain today, I know that what was promised will come true. He gripped his hammer tight, his face full of a quiet, steady confidence that didn't need clouds to believe in the storm. Fidelis opened the scroll, and for a moment, a few words appeared in golden ink. She read Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7 aloud, as Immanuel reached out to touch the rough, strong wood of the ark. He could feel the power of Noah's hard work and his even stronger belief. Faith was acting on the truth before the evidence ever arrived. They left the desert and entered a place of shifting sands where the wind blew softly. Fidelis taught Immanuel that faith often means leaving behind the places where we feel most comfortable to follow a higher calling. The sand dunes stretched out like waves of gold as they walked toward a small cluster of tents in the distance. Under a sky filled with a million shimmering stars, they met a man named Abraham. He was standing outside his tent, looking up at the vast constellations. I am searching for a city whose builder is God, Abraham told them. He had left his old home far behind, traveling into the unknown because he trusted the voice that called him. Near a white tent, they found a woman named Sarah. She was folding a beautiful, soft blanket, and her laughter sounded like music in the quiet air. I learned that nothing is too hard for the promise keeper, she whispered. Her face was full of wonder because she had seen a miracle happen when everyone else said it was impossible. As they continued, the sun suddenly disappeared behind jagged black cliffs. They entered a narrow, dark valley where long shadows stretched out like fingers. The air grew cold, and Immanuel felt very small. He could hear the whispering shadows of doubt telling him to turn back and go home, where it was safe and warm. Seeing his fear, Fidelis reached into the air and pulled out a heavy round shield. It was made of a shimmering silver metal that glowed with its own internal light. She handed it to Immanuel. This is the shield of faith, she said. It is your protection against the darkness. Hold it high and do not let your heart be troubled. Immanuel took the shield and felt a surge of courage. He held it firmly in front of his heart. Whenever a shadow of doubt tried to creep close, the light from the shield pushed it back. He realized that faith wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice to protect his heart and keep moving forward, even when he couldn't see the end of the path. They emerged from the valley and reached the massive stone walls of a great city. High up in a window, a woman named Rahab was carefully tying a bright scarlet cord to the frame. She looked down at Immanuel with a brave and knowing look. She had risked everything to help the messengers of truth because she believed in a power greater than the city's walls. Rahab chose the right side even when it was dangerous, Fidelis explained. Faith is choosing to do what is right, even if you are the only one doing it. Immanuel looked at the red cord and realized that sometimes faith is a bold signal to the world about who you trust. He felt his own resolve grow stronger as he walked on. At a lush riverbank where green reeds swayed in the breeze, they met a man named Moses. He wore simple clothes but had the presence of a king. He had once lived in a golden palace, but he had chosen to leave all that wealth behind to lead his people toward freedom. He knew that the treasures of the heart were worth more than all the gold in Egypt. Moses stepped toward the water's edge and raised his staff high into the air. With a sound like 1,000 rushing winds, the mighty sea began to pull apart. The water rose up like tall, shimmering walls of glass on the left and the right. revealing a path of dry sand right through the middle of the deep ocean. Immanuel couldn't help himself. He ran. He raced onto the dry land between the walls of water. He looked up in total amazement at the colorful fish swimming behind the glass-like walls of the sea. He realized that for those who walk by faith, the impossible becomes a path to walk upon. His boots kicked up the salt-crusted sand as he laughed with delight. They climbed one final, steep hill as the sun began to rise. At the very top, the mist evaporated completely to reveal a magnificent golden city. It was bathed in an eternal warm light that made every stone sparkle like a diamond. Immanuel stood at the summit, breathless, realizing that the journey had brought him exactly where he was meant to be. Immanuel pulled the scroll from his satchel one last time. To his surprise, it was no longer blank. A beautiful, detailed map had drawn itself in glowing gold, showing every single step he had taken and every person he had met. He realized now that his own footsteps had written the map. By taking the journey, he had created the guide for others to follow.